Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Eerie International, episode 496 this week. My name is David from the United States.
I'm Andi from Germany.
And I'm Dave from the UK.
And we are reunited to finish out our month of South Korean revenge, horror, procedural, crime, drama movies with I Saw the Devil. Welcome to the show. If this is your first time listening, we're a horror podcast. We talk about horror stuff in all kinds of different mediums. Filmed this week. We're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, tons of episodes. Everything's free, all pretty straightforward. You can find us wherever you find your podcasts, over on YouTube as well. What else? I feel rusty for some reason. Did we take last week off? We didn't, right?
We did not.
No, we didn't.
Why do I feel weird? Okay, well, I'll move past it. I'll shake it off. What else? Anything else? Yeah. Oh, social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you want to send us longer form thoughts via email, feel free to do so at eerieinternational@gmail.com. No messages this week, so I think we can dive right in. We've all got, Andi and I have a few things to cover. So, Andi, please, for the love of Christ, take control of the podcast away from me. What did you get into this past week?
Of Christ. Okay. So, first thing. We watched the Netflix miniseries Baby Reindeer that came out a couple of years ago. Did any of you guys watch that?
No.
Did not watch it, but
Did
I'm
see
aware
some.
of it, and yeah.
I saw a few bits about it, but never really sat down to watch it.
I think I even went as far as to, at one point while I was working, listen to the entire Piers Morgan interview with the real lady. So I was invested and interested enough without having watched the show. So I'm vaguely aware.
Two psychopaths. One microphone, all right.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yep.
It was a pretty big deal when it came out a couple of years ago. A lot of was written about it. It was very successful, and we finally sat down and watched it last Sunday, actually, a couple of episodes before we started recording the latest Eerie episode, and the rest afterwards. So we watched the whole series Sunday a week ago. It's only, I think, what was it, 7 episodes, half-hour episodes. So not too long. It's about based on a true story that happened to Richard Gadd, the guy who wrote the story and stars in the series. He had written stage plays, or I think the first thing was a one man act, and then the other one was a proper stage play. I don't know. On this thing that happened to him, and then they made this Netflix series, and as I said, became very successful. And it's a very uncomfortable watch. It's about him coming up as a young comedian in the London scene, and gaining a very, very intensive stalker. This lady who just shows up at the pub each day that he's working at, and sending him hundreds of emails a day, and just not letting go, and everything. As it's a very uncomfortable watch, and that feeling just increases from episode to episode, and there's a climax halfway through the series when you see more about his past, things that happened to him before he gained the stalker that influenced his life, and it's a lot of trauma, and he's also a very flawed person, so he's not just making himself out to be like this innocent guy that just attracts weird people. So he's very open about himself making mistakes, and not knowing where to draw the line, and it's very, very interesting. It's a good watch. It's uncomfortable, but definitely a recommendation. And so, I mean, it's not a thing that people haven't noticed, obviously. So, as I said, it was very successful, and made quite a wave. But if you're interested, and it seems like you guys had at least some interest in some point when
Yeah.
you get around to it, I would definitely recommend watching it.
Cool. Yeah, it's on my list for sure. And I think you may have said this already, maybe you didn't. His new show is coming out soon, or did come out already.
I believe it is out, but it's not on Netflix. It's called Half
Ah,
Human.
okay.
Stars himself
Gotcha.
and Jamie Bell.
That's right.
But it's on something that I don't have access to, so I'm not entirely. But I believe it's out. I think so.
Okay. Cool.
And then the other thing, an old thing, we rewatched Evil Dead, the Fede Alvarez
I
version
saw that.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It may sound weird, but this is kind of a comfort movie.
No, I totally get it. The original one and the remake for me are both kind of comfort movies in a weird way.
Yeah, because as I texted to you guys earlier, and we're currently dealing with record-breaking heat in Germany. So during the week when I'm at the office, it's not that bad, but the temperature increased from day to day, and has now reached its peak over the weekend. And obviously, I'm not in the office over the weekend, and my wife obviously is. So we're just trying to get the flat as dark as possible, close all the windows, don't let any air inside because it's just so hot outside. We're just existing in our apartment and trying to survive this weekend. And so yesterday we thought let's put some movie on that we don't have to pay too much attention to, and we ended up doing Evil Dead because it is that movie that we have seen several times that we do like. And yes, it's kind of a comfort movie that you can almost throw on at any time, and just have playing, and still great, still a very fun movie. And yeah, that's
There's
Saturday is.
nothing more refreshing when it's hot outside than a nice rain of blood to end a movie with.
If I'm even more I don't know, stumbling over my words than usual, it is because it's just so hot, and I'm already apologizing to the movie that we're talking about today. I'm just happy that we watched the movie fairly early this week because we had the time, and we also thought, okay, it's only getting hotter, and the hotter it gets, the less I can pay attention to a movie. So we watched the movie fairly early, so to have that sorted. But yeah, I sent you that picture of the of the Nuremberg tram lines, or the damage that the tracks are taking, so that no tram lines are operating this weekend at all. And yeah, that's the real horror of the world: climate collapse.
Yeah, it's been here the past week or two. It's been pretty nice. I mean, I don't know this in Celsius, but Fahrenheit, it's been between 70 and at the most 80. So even when it's been hot out, it's been bearable. You might sweat a little bit, but you can walk around. It's still relatively comfortable. But then I looked ahead at this weekend, or this coming week, starting I think Wednesday on through the weekend, and it's 90s. It jumped almost 20 degrees. So
we're close to 100 currently. 97, 98 is the peak of the day. So that's what we're currently dealing with.
Yeah. And yet you'll get, and obviously this isn't aimed at you, David, but you'll get random Americans on the internet saying, Europe really should just get air conditioning because they would just stop bitching about the heat then. And it's our roads are melting. A bit of air conditioning isn't going to change that.
Yeah.
It's maddening, but
just implementing more machines that need more energy isn't solving the problem long term.
Right.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay, but that's it for me.
Okay. I have one quick thing, and it's definitely got horror related to it, but as an overall thing, it's not necessarily horror, but you'll understand it in a second. It's a video game called Retro Rewind. I found out somewhat recently, within the past few months, about a couple of these simulation games that I don't even want to say have become popular. I've become more aware of them in more recent years, where it's job simulation type things. Usually there's some sort of satirical or funny kind of edge to it. There's a VR one that's pretty popular that has a lot of like funny sort of, comedy within it. But there are some that are straight up like Power Wash Simulator and all these like trucking games where you're just driving across the country and delivering stuff or whatever. I had seen that there was one out that people were, there were a couple, but one in particular had stuck out to me where you run a video store in like basically like the late 80s, early 90s. So at some point on Steam, it went on sale and I picked it up and had just had it sitting there for a while. And for whatever reason, this past week, sat down and booted it up, and I very, very, very quickly fell in love with it. So I've been playing it, not nonstop because I've been busy with work and everything else, but it's crazy. It's one of those, in a similar way that it scratches that itch that simulation games can scratch, where it's like sort of comforting, even though it's, I don't know, there is something I think very dystopian about it if we like analyze it too much. Not even too much. It's pretty easy to analyze it and come away with this conclusion that we're like playing video games that are mimicking manual labor. Like there's a weird sort of dissonance to it, I guess. But for me at least, on like a very subjective level, I know this job so well. I worked, so many or like multiple different video chains, including Blockbuster and Movie Gallery growing up at different locations, different cities, basically up through, I worked at 3 or 4 different ones as they were shutting down, not showing up and then they shut down, but eventually they closed and I'd moved to a different one, and then eventually that wouldn't make enough and it would get closed. And I worked at a Blockbuster at one point where they literally installed like a Blockbuster, like a Redbox style kiosk outside of our store. So it's just like crippling the store itself. So went through, so like that was a big part of my upbringing were these jobs. So there's so many aspects about it that like I've noticed that there's like muscle memory with me playing this game where I'm just like, oh, well, there's no one at the counter, so I can go to the return box and check movies back in. Just stuff where like I don't have to be reminded or look for objective markers or like my mind clicks into that. But then there's a customization aspect to the game too, which is really fun and like you can change wallpaper and fixtures and everything feels very authentic to the era. There's something like they really kind of nail the way all of the gameplay aspects feel. So when you're like checking stuff out for people, or there's other things that they add, so it's not just the same thing over and over again, which again, it kind of is because it's simulating a job, but you are also running it's your store. So as you level up, you're getting like different upgrades and different key like stands and different things for your, you can expand it. You can start like, I got to the point here recently where I just hired my first employee and I can tell him specific stuff to do. So he can run the checkout counter and I can check movies in and stuff like that instead of doing it all by myself. And anyway, there's a big, like movie aspect to it too. So like they obviously can't use real movies or it would be a licensing nightmare. So it's all fake movies, but they have them separated into genres. So there's like all of these fake horror movies. And that's one thing that's been awesome is like I've set up like a little horror section in my movie store and like I've gotten very into it. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, all right, I'll definitely play this until I get through all of the upgrades and everything else. And depending on how much customization I have, I'll probably just try to recreate one of the video stores I worked at, because I'm not like a super creative person in Minecraft where I can just like visualize something in my head and then try to set out and make it. Like I do better with guides or pictures or whatever. So in this case, I was like, well, I've got this mapped out in my brain. Like this isn't the floor map of this Blockbuster's not going away. So anyway, there's all kinds of little like Easter eggs and little movie references to like obvious real stuff. Literally this morning I was drinking my coffee and playing and in the game on different days certain things will happen. So like on Tuesdays and Thursdays the back door of the video store will open up after 9 p.m. and it lets you go out into the alleyway and there's a dude in a trench coat selling like foreign horror movies and like porn and stuff that you can buy like black market wise to then rent out in your store. Yeah. So there's all these different things. This morning when I was playing it, it was Friday the 13th on the calendar. And as I was checking stuff in, I looked up and noticed that there was a guy in a hockey mask and a green shirt standing outside of the window right there staring at me. very direct Jason reference. So there's all kinds of cool shit like that. It's very fun. The last thing I was going to mention too, that this was part of the reason why I ended up getting this one over the other one, which I don't know that the other one is bad. I don't even remember what it's called, but I think this is the one that kind of took off, in a bigger way. So in the store, there's one TV that's up in the corner that's playing stuff, like fake movies, just like in a video store would have back in the day, usually multiple TVs. And I actually bought another TV for my store that I set up in one corner that's also playing stuff. I found a guide at one point. There's a way that you can take your own video clips and as long as they're compressed in the right format or whatever, which is pretty easy. If you've ever used like Handbrake, you just drop it in there and choose what you want it to be. You can then upload those files into the folder on your PC for the game, and then it will play those. It'll play whatever. So like I've already been thinking like, I'm sure there's on YouTube, there's got to be like the legit old school Blockbuster ones that had their own programming and like music videos and movie tie-in things and commercials and shit like that you can add in. And it will play in your store. So you'll hear it playing. You can see it on the TVs. Like, anyway, it's very nerdy, but if you're like, but also like very specifically nostalgic in all of these ways that like just are, it's very comforting to me to play. And it's also one of those jobs that just like doesn't exist anymore in really any capacity. So, I mean, we have point of sale systems still at retail jobs and shit like that. So obviously some aspects of it are still around, but with everything being digital now and just physical media dying in general, but then this especially video stores, like it's just such a foreign thing now. But it was such a, even before I worked in video stores, they obviously were such a huge part of my childhood. Like the amount of excitement I would have going to the video store or to going to Blockbuster or wherever with my family, and being like, oh, okay, they've got a deal. I can get 5 for $5 on stuff that aren't new releases, and just figuring out what all I'm going to check out, and having like a stack of stuff at home, all that kind of shit. Anyway, it's been very fun to play. So I recommend it I don't think it's on consoles yet, but if you've got a PC, and it's pretty like, it has kind of a cartoony look, to it, and isn't like a high, it's not a demanding game for PCs. I would imagine most any PC could run it. I'm guessing. I don't know a ton about PCs. That's your domain, Dave. But
yeah,
anyway.
It definitely sounds like the sort of game from the things that you've described. It probably is better off on PC if you're going to play it for all of the things that
mouse
you
and
can mod
keyboard
into
for
it.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, and
like all the features.
modding, absolutely. That's actually one thing I forgot to say. I haven't looked this up yet, but there's a PC in your office in the back room, and you can order new movies as they come out and stuff and whatever. And one of the tabs on there says Black Market, and when you click on it, there's a field for you to put in an SKU, a SKU number. And I'm wondering if that's like for the community to be like, here's a SKU for, fucking Evil Dead or whatever that is custom made to where you can then load it in and have your own. I mean, stuff like that's so easy. And I feel like mods like that, especially in games like this, are so prevalent and popular and stuff because people like that level of customization. So
yeah, well, you look at some of the games over the last few years that have. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of Car Mechanic Simulator, and there's several versions of that now. But on PC, you play the game and it's got like generic cars, and maybe they'll launch some DLC packs that will allow you to add like Chrysler vehicles or General Motors or whatever.
Right.
But there's so many fan mods that are made available both through the Steam store and also just like in other places where you can just bring pretty much any car that you want into that game, and that the reason I'm talking about a car mechanic game on a horror podcast is just because it illustrates, especially with PC gaming and games that are designed with storefronts like Steam in mind, just how adaptable and moddable games can be after release. And all it takes is for the developers to have the mind to allow their game to be modified after the fact. And most Steam games, even if they're not designed to be moddable, they are absolutely moddable. And I think no better example of that than Football Manager 26, where when they released it, they were like, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to create custom skins for this, and you're not going to be able to do this, that, and the other. And literally within months, we had people designing entire 3D stadium packs. They had skins. They had all of these things that they had designed and developed because, number one, it was a fairly well-known engine that Sports Interactive had decided to use. But also, again, it's on Steam, which means that you can design these things and then put them on the Steam Workshop for everybody to enjoy. So that makes it a lot easier. Just, yeah, like I'm not just saying this because of the whole problem with my PS5 blowing up, but I genuinely do think that like PC gaming just gives you so much flexibility. And with games like the one you're talking about here, and you already mentioned about, like a custom video packages that you could maybe import into to play in the background, like that kind of thing being baked into the game makes me really excited for what you could do with things that aren't baked into it.
Yep, and that stuff that's always been like I had PC stuff as a kid, but I never had growing up. I didn't have gaming PCs and stuff until I was in my late 20s, probably more my early mid 30s, more recently. And so I like the modding sort of community and stuff was something that I was always aware of, but never really got to interact with a whole lot because I was always a console gamer guy. But even with that stuff, those moments where it would happen. Especially where it would interact with the game in that way. Those are that always kind of lit my brain up. Like I was always super excited about those sorts of implementations. Like the one I always think about is I had Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories for PSP, and you could connect your PSP to your PC and load in your MP3s, and then it would have a station within Vice City Stories that would be your music, which like as a kid I was like, this is fucking crazy. So you're driving around and then listening to My Chemical Romance in my case or whatever.
And in recent years they've gotten rid of that. Like you used to be able to import MP3s into WWE games, so you could have whatever song you wanted as your entrance theme. Yeah, cool. And then when they moved over to PS4, they just got rid of that feature, and they reckon it's because of the legality of it. But ultimately, like you're not distributing MP3s. You're using your own personal MP3 to play
or
on
making
your own.
money.
Yeah, and even if you play online, I don't think you're actually able to hear you. I don't think you were able to hear custom tracks that other players were using. In the same way that you can't see like custom uniforms on.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
Because it has to be like locally held content, so it would just play a placeholder. But yeah, I miss those days when things were a little bit more open and free and easy to do what you wanted with your games. And there are still ways around it, but
yeah, totally. And even with this, like you said, with Retro Rewind, there's already so much customization within it that even without that like really dorky extra steps that I'm planning on doing, there's still so much to have fun with and enjoy. And
I think it's just kind of awesome that you're able to relive your earlier employment years in video game form and somehow enjoy it,
Yeah, I mean, I think there also is some, in this particular case, I think there also is something to the fact that, like, I do have really fond, positive memories of those years working those jobs, even if they were jobs that, because there were some in there, like, the only job I ever kind of got fired from was one of those, and it was this, like, very awful, horrible person who was the manager, and there's a whole story involving the film Lady in the Water behind that, which I'm sure I told on the podcast at some point. So like there are definitely some like of the lowest lows I've had with jobs in terms of bad moments or whatever. In that case, wasn't my fault, but still. But overall, like I always liked those jobs, and even if I said some awesome coworkers, some not so awesome, but it was still like always a fun environment for me because I was always so excited about, and still I'm excited when someone's like, oh yeah, he's in that movie. Oh man, what is it? It's got the guy that has this, is in this thing, and it's about a dog, like that sort of stuff.
That's why we get on so well.
I played that game for years, like every single day with people, and was pretty good at it, and still do okay with it too. And a lot of it is just, it's all my interests coming together in a job, and that would rarely happen. I mean, I think after I got done working in those sorts of jobs, there was a long stretch before I quit to do comics full time, where I was back to working jobs where my interests didn't really intersect much at all. And so I think there was something about that where it was like, all right, this is still a job, and I'm probably getting paid minimum wage, and I don't have health insurance. Like, there's all these things about it that aren't great, but it was it was fun, and like I remember those days. I remember those jobs pretty fondly. So I think, yeah, absolutely, the playing this game hits a lot of nostalgia and dopamine, whatever sort of hits. And then also, yeah, like I said, there's just all these little fun wrinkles and additions to it. So anyway, yeah, but that's it for me this week. Just pretty much that. I went and saw a couple movies, Masters of the Universe and the new Jackass, but not horror. So I can talk to you guys about those later. I liked Masters of the Universe, though. It was fun. And a lot of fisting jokes, like you pointed out, Dave.
A hell of
So,
a lot. More than I expected
surprising
for
amount.
a rating that it had, yeah.
I also watched it at that point. This is a longer story. I'll tell you guys off air, but I had been awake at that point for 40 straight hours, which I don't know that I've ever done before.
Good grief.
But yeah, so I was already kind of delirious, and then watched this movie that have no connection to Masters of the Universe growing up. So it was a fun time. All right, let's talk about our movie of the week. I Saw the Devil, 2010 South Korean action thriller film directed by Jee-woon and written by Park Hoon-jung. This film follows NIS agent Kim Soo-hyun, who embarks on a quest for vengeance when his fiancée is brutally murdered by serial killer Jang Kyung-chul. This is, of all the movies, I think I mentioned this in past weeks when Andi brought up this little trilogy to do. This was the one that I had seen. This is the one that I was sort of templating in my brain what these other two films would maybe be like, or be in the same sort of realm or world or tone or whatever else. And the reason I'm introducing this movie that way is because that's something I've thought about a lot after watching this movie. And these three films together is how it's interesting how similar and different they all are from each other in terms of how they handle and approach so many of the things that we've talked about week over week. So I'm excited to get into this one. Let's go around the room as we do and talk about our overall general thoughts. Andi, kick us off. What did you think of I Saw the Devil?
Right, so I had seen this movie before once, but not under great circumstances. I was very tired the first time that I watched it, so I may have missed a few things. I don't know. I didn't have a big impression of the movie the first time. I knew, and I had heard about it a lot. People had talked about it. It wasn't easy to get in Germany, and it had quickly become this cult classic in a way. And my takeaway wasn't as strong. As I said, me being tired definitely played a role in that, and I think maybe the movie was too mean for me in some way. So now I was definitely awake watching it this time. May have been a little hot outside, but still. So maybe not, again, the optimal circumstances to watch a movie, but still it worked. So yeah, I definitely like the movie. It is a mean movie. I have questions about some things in the movie. It's not my favorite out of the three that we watched in this series, but it's definitely a strong movie. It's different than the others. I mean, they're all different from each other, but I think the perspective is a very different one in this one from the other two. It's different in the camera work and everything. And so yeah, very good movie. I liked it, and I have more thoughts that we can flesh out as we go on. So Dave, I assume this was the first time for you seeing this one.
Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed the film overall. I thought the beginning of it felt very much like a lot of serial killer thrillers that you see. It definitely fell in line with what I would expect to see from a movie that is called this, but also kind of South Korean crime dramas and thrillers. But then the middle took a really unexpected turn where it was just like, I know who you are, I've caught you, and now I'm setting you free so I can catch you again, and I'm going to continually beat you down. And I thought that it was going down the road of, I'm going to keep beating you until you decide you've had enough and you hand yourself in. And it didn't really, that wasn't the intention, it didn't go that way. And then, yeah, like the final act of the movie, the final third of the movie, so to speak, it fell back into that more traditional thriller kind of, man on a mission trying to track down the killer. But where is he? Where could he be? My only slight criticism would be it's set in present day South Korea, so phones are everywhere. You couldn't phone your boss and warn him any earlier. It didn't occur to you that, especially after the guy talked to you and made inferences about the father-in-law and the daughter, that kind of felt a little bit like contrived so that he could get there in time and whatnot. But that's a really minor niggle. Overall, I really enjoyed the structure of the movie. It was really well acted. I thought that the way that it moved along, it certainly didn't feel like it was a 2 hour and 25-minute movie, which it is apparently, or somewhere near that anyway. I'm going on the runtime that came up when I paused it once.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, I did really enjoy it overall. David?
Yep, I'm 3 for 3. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. This was one I had seen back when it first came out. Really liked it back then. I think this was, I mentioned this last week, would have been after I had kind of realized and discovered an appreciation for South Korean stuff in high school when I worked at one of the Blockbusters I previously mentioned. Because we were starting to get more distribution there, even in this tiny ass 5,000 population town that I lived in Indiana. Blockbuster was getting more foreign stuff, and we didn't check it out a lot there, but there were ones that caught my eye. So I think I mentioned last week the first one was A Tale of Two Sisters, which is from the same director of this film, and that one really enjoyed. And then I think after that I watched Old Boy, and then as the other stuff, Three Extremes, anything that we would get there, I would check out. And so this would have come a little bit later when I was in college, but I would have known by this point, I was interested, and I'm assuming I would have remembered or noticed at the time that it's the same dude from Old Boy, I believe, right? Am I mixing these movies up? It's the guy from Old Boy.
Yeah.
I'm double checking. Okay, yeah, it is. All right. And I remember watching it at the time and being kind of blown away by it. I wondered watching it this go around. There's definitely a type of movie and a type of vibe that I liked at the time that is probably not super dissimilar from a lot of other early 20-year-old American men, maybe not American men, but American film nerds at the time. So I think there would have been definitely more of was into darker, edgier stuff, or what's the stuff that's really going to kind of shock me or push things or whatever, which I've definitely chilled on as I've gotten older. And a lot of times now shit like that kind of makes me roll my eyes, because I'm like, all right, this is kind of a lazy way out to go for shock value or whatever, depending on how it's handled, obviously. But so I wondered watching it this time if my memories of it would hit the same way this go around, because I did remember it being pretty fucking intense and sort of, going all in on the revenge stuff. One of those movies that really does not show, I don't want to say it doesn't show nuance, but they're just unapologetically, this guy is in it, does not give a fuck if his life is completely destroyed. And if he never recovers from it. It's not about healing, it's about destruction. So I remembered that was an aspect of it, but especially after watching the two movies we've watched in the past 2 weeks, I wondered, is this going to be those movies had nuance to them in different ways, and I wondered with this one if it would. And I felt like this worked still pretty well for me. There definitely is a different tone. There's a different sort of intensity to it, even in the way that some of the action is blocked, some of the camera work Andi mentioned, where it feels almost kind of approaching into action movie territory at times. And they're brief moments. It's not suddenly we're in the raid and there's a full on fight scene or anything, but the way that the camera does move and work, it has a different sort of intensity to it. There's a brutality to the violence that is different than the brutality in the other two films, because there's definitely you see shit in this, they don't cut away, and it is very intense at times. But there's sort of, I think, kind of right away at the beginning when he kills her in the car with the or wait, I'm mixing it up. He kills her. He kills the girl with the pipe later. But he attacks her in the car and then takes her away. That's right. But even with that, I mean, he does hit her a bunch of times, I think, or stabs her. I forget exactly how he kills her at the very, very beginning. But it's pretty unflinching, and the movie lets you know right away, like, this isn't a procedural where, like, now he's going to try to find her, like, she's dead. And, like, that's the note that the movie starts off at. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I felt like the tone was balanced pretty well. Again, it's very dark. So if you're someone that's either squeamish because of violence or just like these sorts of themes, it's not going to be for you. But I felt like they balanced it pretty well. I feel like the actors were all really good. Like genuinely at times pretty excellent. I like that there's a sort of like this movie more than the others has I don't want to call it fun. I think I've said that sentence every single week where it's like, I don't want to say fun. Like all these South Korean crime movies have some element that always feels kind of fun, but in a way where you're like, I hesitate to say that because the subject matter is just so fucking dark. This movie more than the other two has a sort of like almost genre-y world with the serial killer stuff that is the thing that I started to say is more fun. Again, it's not fun, it's dark, but there are other serial killers in this movie, and they have like, they talk to each other and interact with each other in a way that feels almost kind of super villainy at times. I mean, not in a bad way, but just in a way that feels kind of comic booky, or like that there's a bigger mythology at play. The movie doesn't delve into that, but I mean, even the scene, and this was the scene that I remembered the most from the movie, even having watched it, 15 plus years ago, was the scene where he kills those two dudes in the car and the camera's spinning around. It's a pretty badass scene, I think, honestly. I think it holds up pretty well. But that I forgot that those dudes are like, heavily implied. I don't even say implied. I think the movie pretty much spells it out that they were some sort of murderers too. And had killed a guy, had taken over his car, and the body was in the trunk. So there's another aspect of this one, another wrinkle to it that I found pretty interesting. That again it's dark, but it did make it and weirdly an easier watch at times, even though it was more viscerally violent, I think. I don't know if that makes sense. This is all very subjective too, obviously, in terms of how people interact with violence, but for me. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of just going into very granular territory now. So Andi, please take over.
It almost feels like there's this society of serial killers, right? With what you meant with the comic book comparison that you made, and yeah. So it is a very brutal movie, and as you described, the camera work, especially compared to the big kill in The Chaser last week, where we talked about you don't really see much. The camera isn't showing you the impact of the hammer to the head, and somehow all these movies have hammers to the head.
Yep.
And one thing that I thought about during the last two movies that I have yet to mention, and I don't think we mentioned that at all. Police never has guns in these movies for some reason.
Yeah. It was weird when he pulls a shotgun out in one scene in this where you're like, oh shit, I forgot that guns do exist still. They're just not really around.
It made me question if South Korean police just don't carry guns. But then when I read that Wikipedia article that we talked about last week about the South Korean police, they have a section where they list the models of guns that South Korean police uses. So I don't really know.
That wouldn't necessarily mean that they all carry them.
Sure.
In the same way that if you looked up the London police, I'm sure there would be a section for the models of guns that they use. But we have a special armed section that would come out to incidents that required them. Other than that, we don't and haven't carried firearms. I say we. I'm not in the police, but the police in the UK haven't carried firearms since probably the 1960s, maybe later.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what I
What a
thought
world.
about with these movies, because I knew that about England police, so I thought maybe in South Korea it's a similar thing, but it was just noticeable that these are
Oh, yeah.
guys hunting down serial killers, and none of them have guns. They just jump kick people.
That's the true gun. That's the gun that God has
cinematic,
given each of them, is that cannon on their legs.
As corrupt as the South Korean police are portrayed in some of these movies, and as inept as they are, I think most of them probably still understand that a flying kick is easier to cover up than a gunshot wound, where it comes to potential brutality charges.
So the hammers to the head are way more visible in I Saw the Devil than it was in the Chaser. I felt like the camera work wasn't as stylish as in the Chaser, where the Chaser felt more like it had a distinct artificial visual style, which I absolutely enjoy. I felt like I Saw the Devil is more naturalistic in a way, just more grittier in that way also. Just more not exactly like a documentary, but just more documenting what is really going on.
Grounded.
Not loading up not loading the image with style as the Chaser did. My gripe with the movie in a way is that I don't feel sympathy for anyone, because Lee Byung-hun's character, because him letting the killer go all the time, that causes people being killed and raped and everything. So the breakdown at the end, and then at the end where he involves the family of their killer that had nothing to do with anything, who are as innocent as the women getting killed in this movie. So he isn't. He is almost as bad as the killer that he hunted down, and that makes me that maybe that's the point of the movie, but it also gives me a hard time connecting with the main characters in this movie, which is the reason why it doesn't impact me as much as, for example, The Chaser did, a movie that really stayed with me, where I looked up the director and his other movies and things like that. I mean, I also read about this director and which movies he made. I have The Good, the Bad, and the Weird on my shelf, and I have seen Tale of Two Sisters at some point, but still, I'm not as invested in I Saw the Devil as I was with The Chaser because of that reason, because I just don't connect to the protagonists being the killer and the hunter in this movie, because they're both bad and cause deaths, one directly and the other one indirectly, but that's not better than that actually killing innocent people.
Definitely feel like there's a lot less character moments, and that is probably down to the fact that the central section of the movie is literally just a case of Kim Soo-hyun is kind of like the South Korean Terminator. He doesn't show that much in the way of emotion. He just kind of searches down his man and then beats him with a hammer, or
cuts his Achilles tendon.
Oh my God! I had trouble watching that scene. I managed it in the end, but good Lord,
the gnarly one.
But I do like the fact that they start off with him going after other criminals that are on this kind of short list that the police have for who it could be. And the first dude, literally, like, the only crime that you can provably point to is questionable taste in underwear while jacking off. Obviously, he does go on to admit that he killed at least 2 people, according to what the police say when he hands himself in. But
I also like that the implication there is that when you jerk off, you put on really fancy underwear. You really make an event of it, since you're judging this man's.
You got to, man,
not reaching the heights.
You've got to. Look, I've never understood the point in having patterned underwear. I'm a very basic guy. Where it comes to underwear, I'll have like block colours for the most part. But also, I won't be wearing kind of like budgie smuggler tighty whitey style pants. Like I'm a boxer dude,
Sure.
I need some cycle short style.
Some sophistication, yeah.
Absolutely. When I'm yanking my plank, it's all about. But anyway, I did enjoy the moment where he's got the guy sat down and he's interrogating him, and then he just beats him in the crotch with what looks like an adjustable spanner or something.
Yeah, they genuine. This movie is in like a weird subset of horror movies that like really kind of figured out and nailed and go for the blunt force trauma impact stuff. Like one movie that I want to do on the podcast at some point, and I'm 99% sure we haven't done it. I know I've brought it up, is Kill List, the Ben Wheatley movie, and that's one that has at least one scene in it that is also some hammer blunt force trauma where it's like very close to probably being too real. I've never seen someone actually get beaten to death with a hammer, thankfully, but my mind sees some of these shots and is like, I bet that's close. Like, unfortunately, it is very brutal. There's not a, splatterpunk kind of gore thing happening to sort of, which would weirdly makes it less intense sometimes because it becomes kind of, a brain dead alive sort of, just gross out gore thing. There's a few in this movie where you're just like, holy fuck, that just looks too real almost. And that dude's dick getting pulverized is one of them. Pretty, like, you could tell that they were like, we're really gonna make sure people feel this one. Like, we're not cutting away, and we want you to feel like this thing is mangled now. Yeah. It is hardcore.
He bust his balls pretty bad.
Absolutely.
Pretty bad. To which, the police, good on them, they made a joke of it.
Well, and so much so that he admits to the murders of a bunch of other unrelated people, so
that's like the damage is done.
Worked out. Yeah.
He's fearful. Like that whole section where he's kind of methodically going one after the other and kind of eliminating them from the inquiries, so to speak. It's good that they put these little asides in where it's like he's just admitted to doing 2 murders because it kind of retroactively justifies him using so much force. But I come back to this point that we've talked about previous episodes recently where he as a character doesn't know for sure that these guys are guilty of anything, and the amount of violence that he's visiting upon them to get them to admit to something is both counterintuitive, but also, if they're innocent, you've just beaten the absolute shit out of an innocent man. Right. And again, as far as I'm aware, in South Korea, it is not illegal to beat your meat. And I'm assuming that everyone was legal in that video that he was watching as well, but I don't know. So yeah, I mean they're a Christian country. Are they a Catholic country? Because if they are, that would potentially explain some of the attitudes towards self pleasuring. Every sperm is sacred, as Monty Python once eulogized. But yeah, I like that part of the movie. It reminds me a lot of these kind of like Hollywood revenge thrillers. Had a bit of Death Wish in it.
That's exactly the same sort of. I thought about that a lot while I was watching it this go around. It scratches that same sort of itch in my head. I have I don't want to say a fascination. It's just a genuine sort of enjoyment with revenge movies like that, old school ones, whether it's movies, books, old novels, whatever. And it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a dying subset, but I feel like it has been for, like, I don't know, it's something that I guess the wider idea of this in pop culture has fascinated me for a while. There's a lot of different areas you can look at it sort of fading or changing out. One in particular I think about a lot is the Punisher, and what the Punisher was, what he represented, who he was within the Marvel universe, the same sort of like the mold that he was being cast out of, which was like the was it The Executioner? There was a series of pulp novels in like the 70s and 80s that were basically just the Punisher before the Punisher, and it was kind of a riff on that in some ways. And then it got co-opted by pieces of shit, douchebags, like whether it's
Yep.
cops, soldiers, whatever. And that symbol now, I remember distinctly a time where I was like, oh, I can't wear my Punisher shirt anymore. Like I'm not comfortable going out with this Skull t-shirt, because that to me was just this cool thing that used to be a shitty Dolph Lundgren movie and then a fun Tom Jane one. But there was, it wasn't really a thing within the wider pop culture sort of awareness. And then that changed, and then so Marvel didn't know what to do with those stories. And I've talked to different people, not saying within the industry necessarily, as some I guess, but that have shifted, and their ideas like, we don't need stories like that anymore. We don't need, like, no one cares about that sort of thing. And I think there's something about my upbringing in particular. I was born in '89, but my dad always liked these sorts of like revenge movies, like you mentioned, Death Wish, westerns, like crime movies, stuff that he grew up with. So that influenced the kind of stuff that I was into. And I think it's a big reason why I'm so drawn to like S. Craig Zoller, for example, because he does stories like that. He does stories about, shitty people making bad decisions and crime and their downfall and repercussions. And it's not wholesome feel good stories. And that's been an interesting thing to see too within pop culture, and like sort of labels that get put on stories like that and what those represent to people. And are stories like that needed because they are sort of just, negative or, and to some people's perspective, sort of miserable. Anyway, I'm going off on a little bit of a rant, but that is a thing that I've always liked and appreciated, are those sorts of stories. And this is one that's definitely like that, where it is all in, or at least to me, that's how I view it. That's the lens I see it through, is they're all in on the revenge as just revenge, destruction, which absolutely does present the problem that Andi talked about, which is that you can't really connect with anyone. Like even what you would call the protagonist, who is trying to get the revenge, eventually gets to a point where you're like, well, I'm not on board for this anymore, man. Well,
no, he becomes a monster.
Yeah, other people are dying too, and like, he's in too deep at that point. He's fucked up too much that like he has no other. I think it his at that like, what else is he going to do other than finish it out? But also, it does have this weird empty feeling of like, well, this was all for nothing. Like all these people, not that it would have been for something, because it still is a dark idea and a concept. There obviously, we talked about this in past weeks too. Like there's a morality aspect at play when you watch these movies, a sense of wanting there to be justice. Even if it is, off the books or whatever else. And so you get into an area of this movie, and I think that's probably why some of the tonal stuff is shifted, and we do have like, oh, check out the society of serial killers and these other characters, and we have these sort of asides, is because they're focusing on other things as they lean into the fact that this is not going to be, there's no happy ending to this movie, and that pretty early on. And I think what Andi kind of said earlier basically nailed it, where he's like, maybe that's the point, maybe it's not the point. Either way, I can't, necessarily fully connect with these characters. I think whether you liked the movie or not, that probably is just a true statement. Because I think, I'm not saying Andi liked it and I didn't, but I think for both of us, we liked it. I think if you dislike the movie, that's a valid criticism too. I mean, it's one of those movies that's absolutely taking that stance and that approach and not really veering from it. It is just watch these two guys, one of whom is this, completely self-destructive, ready to die, ready to burn the world down guy who is grieving and who wants to inflict as much pain as he felt and as this family felt onto this person. And then the other guy is like the Joker. He's just this fucking maniac. And we watch that burn down. Like that's the movie. So if you could get on board for that, then, like you said, I think it is pretty nuts. I think it's very well paced. I agree. You said that earlier, Dave, like 2 hours, 22 minutes, something like that. And it moved right along for me. I watched all but the last 20 minutes. I watched that this morning, but the rest of it I watched last night in one block, and was never bored, was always right there with it. I think it's well made, it's polished. The music at the very beginning, when it first comes in, I was like, why does this sound so shitty? I don't know why it hit me in a weird way. It sounded very like temp music, kind of like,
really?
I don't know. There was
the very
at
first
the very
moment.
The very beginning, I don't know why it was, but it hit me weird. But then they reused
Surprising.
the same piece or parts of the same piece later on, and that time it hit me totally opposite. So it might have just been I don't know. I wasn't in the right headspace. yet.
In the very
or-
beginning, they use this piece with classical guitar, and they use similar classical guitar music in the Chaser, and I love
I'm
those
not thinking of
pieces.
I'm not thinking of that. The thing I'm
Okay.
thinking of is like strings. It's like keyboard strings. How it first starts coming in, and it's meant to sound, I think, more orchestral, but for some reason it felt very sort of tempy, where it was like, this is in here, so we have something until the score is ready. Not the guitar stuff. Yeah, no, I was cool with that. But again, like I said, I think it might have just been one of those things. There's a story I think of every single time this concept comes up. I was working at the comic book shop in college where I met our friend Austin, and I had just gotten into Neutral Milk Hotel. I was listening to their album just basically on repeat all day at the shop. And Austin at that point did not know them really at all. He knew the name but had not listened to them. And he came in when, I forget what song, it was King of Carrot Flowers, one of their like bigger songs. And Austin Wright basically did a Jack Black from High Fidelity, where he was like, what the fuck is this shit? And was immediately mean to me about it, was just like talking shit like to his ear when he came in. Just the mood he was in, the vibe of the store, the way I looked, whatever combination it was, he was just like, this is shit, fuck this music, like in a kind of joking way, but still being like, pretentious. And then there was that moment weeks, months later, whenever, where he was listening to it, and I was like, what the fuck? And he didn't even remember. He was like, this wasn't that thing you were listening to. Like, it just was totally different. So anyway, maybe that's what happened with the strings at the beginning, but yeah.
Possibly could very well be. I think it's interesting that this film definitely takes a position where it's like, we're just going to show you human nature, warts and all, and you're not necessarily going to enjoy the choices that people make. You're not going to agree with the choices that people make, but these are all choices that people in these situations would absolutely make. Not 100% of the time, for sure, but it all felt like it rung true. Like the idea of Kim Soo-hyun essentially just burning the world around him down because he's lost everything and he doesn't really care anymore. He just wants to get revenge. Is a very real thing, which a lot of people will do on very differing levels. Like, some people will lose everything and they'll retreat into drink and drugs. Other people will just immediately have a violent outburst. They might just punch someone in the pub and just have a, like, there are so many ways that people deal with grief and loss, and a lot of them are self-destructive. And in some instances, you can take that self-destructive, violent urge and you can channel it into something that you think is worthwhile and good. But ultimately, all it does is it ensures that you yourself kind of end up self-destructing, certainly on a moral level, but also, like, look at how he is at the beginning of the movie compared to where he is at the end, what he does to that family who, they've got a shithead for a son and father, but they genuinely,
so dark.
I genuinely, like, I think if you were to poll 100 people leaving the theater after that movie, I would bet that 95% of them would be like, they did not deserve that, and that was just mean on his part. Like,
a miserable ending.
The only it's a weird one because the guy obviously doesn't care about his family, so you couldn't pull a very Saw-like thing where it would be like, I've got your family and I'm going to kill them in front of you because you killed my family.
Right, it is just inflicting the biggest amount of damage, and I mean he sums it up at one point. It might even be right there at the end where he says, like, he's just trying to give the full amount of revenge. So it's not just that you die, it's that you feel everything that you did. Yeah, that everything gets inflicted. So that would also include, because we are in this sort of like wacky hardcore revenge misery world, that also includes this, like, the psychic damage that gets dealt to your family.
I guess
in the same way. I'm not justifying, but like that's the logic of the dude and of the movie. And
but the weird
Yeah.
Sorry, the weird thing for me, or not weird necessarily, but the reason it didn't stick for me was because the guy has very much pointed out and shown through his actions that he doesn't care about his family. Even in those last moments, the reason he doesn't want them to open the door isn't because of what they'll see, it's because he doesn't want to die. Like he's very, very selfish where it comes to that, and he goes
Yeah.
backwards and forwards in that scene where he says, just kill me, and then please, I just want to live.
Fucking with them, and
Yeah, but I think ultimately he wants to live. It's bravado up until the point that he realizes what's going to happen, and then he's like, no, please don't kill me, let me live.
It's that like that whole, I don't remember if this is an actual proverb from something, if this is a pop culture thing. What's the whole revenge dig two graves thing?
Yeah,
where it's like the man searching for revenge has to dig two graves, whatever the saying is. Like it's basically that, but a fuckload of graves, like way more graves. Like it's that concept that we're seeing, but just on a slightly more crazy scale, because as you guys have already mentioned, he's letting this dude go. He's fucking with him, and at first you have sort of like a not perverse, but sort of like a dark kind of like, oh, this is cool, like, you know, turn the tape, like a, you know, almost like Hard Candy or one of these movies where we have stuff that is very dark but happening to, you know, bad people. And so because it's, you know, within the realm of fantasy, you know, made up shit, whatever, it's like, okay, yeah, let's get into this. But then the moment other people start getting hurt or raped or killed, you're just like, well, this is just sad now. This is just dark.
And it's just like, you know, it starts off unintentional, but then at the end, he's inflicting this pain on people who literally do not deserve it. Like, just because they are related by blood doesn't mean that they're related by deed or action. And it's, you know, I'm funnily, I was just kind of like reading through the cast list, and it reminded me of the fact that there was that nurse, and the moment that he cuts the guy's Achilles, he says to her, you might want to look away and plug your ears. And like, you know, I think that's an interesting thing that they did, and I wonder if they did it because they wanted to chart his downfall from, I don't want to cause unnecessary suffering to anyone except for this piece of shit. And then by the end of the movie, he's like, no, fuck it, I'll call your family. I'll get them to open the door. I don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
But he does give a shit because he breaks down. But does he break down because of what he's done to that family, or because he doesn't have anything left to live for? Because his revenge is done. Yeah, it's
my read both times was just the total collapse of a guy who has fucked up everything and everyone and himself and will never be okay again. I have a pretty nihilistic view of why he's crying, and it's not that moment. It's
I tend to agree.
He's done. Yeah.
I tend to agree.
They also pulled a very specific, yet another 3 movies in a row where there's a plot point where you're just like, this is from 7, where the whole pregnancy thing is just directly pulled. They do the exact same thing in 7.
Well, they literally had a head in a cardboard box.
Also that, yeah.
But yeah, it's I feel like that's not the only one of these movies where someone was pregnant as well. Like that feels like something that came up in one of the other films, but I can't for the life of me think who it was. So maybe I'm just imagining these things. It was a fever dream brought on by the extreme heat of the European heat wave. But yeah, it's.
I think we talked about vigilante justice last week, and in theory, this is kind of that. And we talked about Punisher and Death Wish, but the problem with this character is that he's not only hunting down his target, he lets him go again and lets him hurt other people. And that's the moment where you lose sympathy for the vigilante, because in these other movies, we talked about Batman, all these, and it's as we said last week, it's fun to see something like this in fiction. Those characters are criminals themselves, but we as viewers, we still sympathize with them, because as a viewer, we know they are doing some form of justice that legal justice isn't able to do, and that's kind of fine, at least in fiction. But when other innocent people are getting hurt, and to me, there's again a difference, because sometimes in these stories, you will have collateral damage trying to get the guy, but he gets the guy and he lets him go again, and then there's more collateral damage, and that there's a problem with still having sympathy for that character and for that behavior. And so at the end, you also don't have sympathy for his breakdown. It's kind of a Memento thing where he just can't stop the hunt. He kind of needs this hunt in his life, apparently. But too many innocent people are suffering. And another thing, I don't 100% understand the contraption at the end. Why does the killer have this thing in his mouth? Because it seems like the problem is he can't yell out to his family because he would have have to let go of that that string thing. But if he would let it go, he could just yell to them, "Don't open the door."
Yeah, but if he lets go of it,
but I think if he lets go, it drops.
And that's the thing that I wasn't 100% sure about. I didn't go back to look at it, but it seemed to me like that thing that he has in his mouth is only at the door, and the door is connected to the contraption, but there's no direct contraption between his string and
it's like a pulley system where it goes through the door. Yeah, so if they pull, it just pulls taut more on him. But there's like a counterweight. Well, the counterweight's the blade, obviously. So he's holding it up, but it's looped through the door so that if they open it, it pulls it out of his mouth even more. That's how I viewed it. Is that how you viewed it, Dave?
I think that's how it was intended to be. I didn't necessarily understand the relationship between the door opening and his grip on it, because to me the door looked like it either swung inwards or slid sideways.
This is like that scene from The Mummy, the Tom Cruise one, where we were trying to figure out the physics of
yeah, exactly.
that did not work, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that I viewed it as was just that it was supposed to be. It wasn't a Saw thing. It wasn't a test. It was just that.
It's a no-win
hopefully
situation.
the timing. Yeah, hopefully the timing would be such that he dies the moment the family gets there. Like he would be holding it in his mouth, trying to maybe figure a way out of it. And then once they got there, not only would they make it speed up the process, but if he screamed or whatever else, like then they would be. It would. I don't know. It's probably because I have such a nihilistic take on everything with this movie, but like I viewed it as like he wanted them to not just show up and find the guy's dead body, but like know that he was alive and was killed either because they did something potentially or died right before they got there. Like even more sort of like pain about it or whatever. But I don't know. Also, just one of those movie things where I'm like, maybe this made more sense in the script.
It was definitely set up. I feel like they did a few establishing shots where it kind of showed how the whole thing was meant to go together, and you get like a distance shot where you can see the rope leading from his mouth to the door and then coming back on itself to the blade above. And they did show us the guillotine being used earlier, so we knew what the guillotine was. So all the parts are there, but maybe they just didn't quite plan it out well enough that the idea was fully set in the viewers' minds. I definitely took it as being like, well, look, you're going to die one of two ways here. You're either going to get too tired to keep this yoke in your mouth anymore, and you're going to lose your head, or someone is going to open the door. And clearly you don't want them to, so that must mean that, because there was like a metal hook that was fashioned that went around the rope, and the reason that he lost his head was because it failed. It didn't have enough strength to stop it from uncurling on itself, so the rope slipped out and he lost his head that way. So I think the plan was definitely that the door opened and he died there and then. But it just the whole thing felt a little bit unnecessarily cruel. But you can't leave him with
kind
no
of the whole
chance.
movie.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like you could
too.
have literally locked him up exactly like that, not called the family, and eventually he would have just collapsed. Not collapsed because he's not going to fall over. He was already on his knees, but he would lose consciousness and he would die that way. And his last moments would be pure pain from the muscular fatigue of holding onto the rope, the mental anguish of knowing what's coming and knowing there's no way out of it. And yeah, like that would have worked. But at this point, our supposed hero is such a unrelenting arsehole that he's just like, no, I'm going to have your kid and your parents find you and witness your freshly decapitated head rolling around like a football. And yeah, it's very difficult to have any sympathy for him. But I don't think at any point during the film, from the moment that he catches the guy and then lets him go, I don't think there's any moment where really the filmmakers try or expect you to have a deep level of sympathy for him. You can be upset with him for the things that are happening because of him letting the guy go. Like his the Jangs being murdered, but ultimately you're upset at the same events that he's upset at. You're not sympathetic towards him for the anguish that he's feeling. I don't think that there was ever really a great push for that. Although, it's funny because filmmaking it has this certain language where it's like, this is the main character and look, they're crying, so you should feel sorry for them. And we see him crying during this film. But it just feels different. It doesn't feel like they're asking for, the big light up sign saying "R" doesn't come on this movie. You don't get an applause, you don't get an R, you don't get laughter, you don't get anything. You just we are here to bear witness to the unraveling of one man, and ultimately his path of destruction rather than the serial killer. So
I think it's one of those that it makes sense that I liked it both times, and that I also, the last time I saw it was probably in 2010. Like it's not a movie that I would want to rewatch. It's not going to be a comfort movie. It's a pretty, dark, miserable. It's not going to end up being okay. You don't necessarily know it's going to get worse than it is. So I'm down for that, but and with moderation. And I think having it be that far, like 15, 16 years apart, was about the right amount of space for me. So I look forward to rewatching it in 15 years.
As you probably remember, Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett at some point were attached to do a remake of this movie for an English language remake, which never came to be. And if I remember correctly, something else or something similar was happening with The Chaser. I think there was also a remake.
Oh yeah, that was on the Wikipedia page too.
Yeah.
There's another thing where like people were attached and whatever, and then just never happened. Cool. Do we have any other final thoughts on this before we move into double feature picks?
No, I think
say so.
I'm good.
Cool. Let's do it. I will actually kick us off this week just to mix it up. I was going to bring this up earlier, but I figured I'll just wait and save it for my double feature pick. So another revenge movie that I'm a big fan of that isn't quite as miserable. It is dark. It is sad. But I think that there's definitely some key differences that make it a movie that I can rewatch pretty much whenever on this one. Is Blue Ruin, Jeremy Saulnier's first film, which I think is a pretty great revenge film. Another one where it's very much a person who is just kind of dedicated to this thing and has nothing left to lose and doesn't care what sort of damage it does to him, whether it's to his physical being or his soul or whatever else, if you want to look at it that way, and is just a very, pure source of hatred that is fueling him, of these people that wronged him. I won't spoil the movie because part of it is how they kind of unravel that, but also has some key differences in terms of his worldview, and this movie is a little bit more about like cycles of violence within families too. But very good film that I think I totally get why Green Room is kind of like viewed, but I think a lot of people sleep on Blue Ruin or forget about it, that he came out with this first. You've seen it, right, Andi?
Yeah, I have. Great movie.
Yeah, good stuff. Dave, have you seen it? I can't remember.
No, I should do, but like a lot of films, I know the name. I know it's got a lot of hype around it. I've never got around to watching it.
Just curious. Yeah, I bet you'll like it if you ever get around to it. All right, let's throw it to you, Dave. What you got?
Nothing inspired this week. I literally name checked the movie earlier on in the episode. I've gone for Death Wish. don't necessarily know which one to go for, the original or the Bruce Willis one. We'll say the original one because it feels grimier. But yeah, there was just something about that kind of investigation period of the movie where he was eliminating. Sorry, that's easy for me to say. Eliminating suspects from the inquiry, and he was just being very, very brutal about it. And also like the link of, although it's not exactly the same, like the fact that Death Wish was, getting revenge for. It's been a while since I've seen it. It was the wife that was the wife and daughter, or one of them.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, like they were raped, and I think one of them died, and the other one may have killed herself because of the trauma. It's been a long fucking time. I saw the Bruce Willis one a lot more recently, but I can't remember what the original one, where it strayed and where it stayed the same. But yeah, it's different, but it is similar because it is a loved one who has been assaulted and murdered, and that has kind of brought the rage down upon the criminals. And ultimately, I feel like Death Wish, whether or not the intention was that you should or shouldn't feel for the main character, I definitely come away from those films feeling like, well, I enjoyed the body count, but I don't feel like you're a good person. And they go to more and more elaborate lengths to try and make him out to be a good person in various movies, and it just doesn't really work because he always comes back round to just killing a bunch of people. And ultimately, he's a good person because he kills pieces of shit. Okay, but yeah, it's Death Wish.
Also a different era too, when they could just be like, well, which woman can we kill in this one to fuel?
Yeah,
there's definitely a different approach to.
Absolutely, like do not be a woman in Charles Bronson's life during the 70s and 80s, and if you see Michael Winner, fucking run, not because of anything, just the fact it's Michael Winner.
Andi, what you got?
Right. So this week I'll give you two options. One that you also already mentioned, and you mentioned some of the reasons for it. When we did the first episode in the series, I said I'm not going to pick 7 every time because you could pick it all every time. But this time it really makes sense exactly for those reasons as you mentioned. Pregnant woman's head in a cardboard box.
Yep.
Then also the cat and mouse game. And just this dark ending for everyone. But then also I thought of another movie because for the last 2 movies I picked black and white double features. And right. This time it depends on which version you're watching, but Lady Vengeance by Park Chan-wook also has the choice on what's his name? Choi Min-sik as the killer, the same as in I Saw the Devil. And if you watch the Fade to Black and White version, the movie starts out in color and ends up in black and white.
Oh, that's cool.
It's part of Park Chan-wook's Revenge trilogy, consisting of Old Boy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and Lady Vengeance. And Lady Vengeance. I've seen once a long time ago. I don't remember too much about it.
That's
but the black and white aspect and the same actor as the killer, I thought would be a nice connection.
Yeah, that's a great pick. Yeah, I've seen one of. I can't remember which one it is. I've Old Boy obviously, and then I've seen. I want to say it's Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. I watched back then too, but don't remember any of it. I actually last night at like 1 a.m, I was on Barnes and Noble's app because they have Criterion movies on sale right now, and often they'll do sales for other labels as well. So I was looking through Radiance and these different boutiques, and I found a copy of Bong Joon-ho's Mother for $8 on Blu-ray, so I picked that up. So I'll finally get around to watching that one as well. Anyway, yeah, that's a great pick. So is the black or is the color to black and white thing an incremental thing, like scenes, or is it literally like it fades to black and white at the rate that the movie is? Like it's happening at an imperceptible rate?
That's how it reads on Wikipedia. As I remember it from watching it, it seemed like the movie has like 3 sections, and the first section is complete color, the second section is less color, and the third section is black and white. I might also misremember, but that's how I viewed the movie when I saw it. Because leading up to watching it that way, I always thought that the color would just gradually fade away,
Yeah.
and in the end, it's completely.
Yeah.
And that's how it reads on the Wikipedia article. So, but not the
Interesting.
way that I remember it.
Cool. Great pick. All right, listeners, let us know what you thought of I Saw the Devil if you have watched this one. Again, longer form thoughts can be sent into us, eerieinternational@gmail.com. No movie next week, right, Andi? Keep me honest.
So a few weeks ago, we decided that there's a movie.
There is a movie next week.
Now out that we want to do. We didn't necessarily specify that it will be directly the next one that we're doing.
Okay,
but
that's fine though. Yeah, I know what you're gonna say. I think is it animated?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I Am Frank Helder.
Yeah, let's do it.
Came out this week or a couple of weeks ago on Netflix. That could be our next one.
Yeah, Dave, you good with that?
I'm good with that.
I figured. We were all excited for that one. So yeah, let's do that. I Am Frank Helder for next week, which, as Andi mentioned, is on Netflix, and is a pretty amazing looking stop motion animated film. Very excited to get into that. So cool. That'll be our movie for next week. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe out there. Stay cool out there, depending on where you're at. Keep watching horror movies, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.